Ladies and gentlemen, the good people of Caldera need our help, and the only way that we can adequately defend them is with a hunter build utilizing the brand new exotic chest piece that dropped in the Edge of Fate, the Moirai. I've got you also with this fashion setup if you would like to look similar to my hunter in rocking this build. But what are we going to do for the build itself? This build, like I said, incorporates the brand new exotic chest piece, the Moirai, where your threaded spike strand melee can bounce to tangles now, detonating them and returning immediately. Tangles detonated by threaded spike are rewoven and retrieved by it, and catches of your threaded spike without a tangle are going to refund extra melee energy. So what we're basically going to want to do with this build is utilize the fact that we can throw our threaded spike at tangles and catch them and reweave them to duplicate tangles and thus duplicate whirling maelstroms. Is going to be the primary idea and theme of this build. So the way it works is relatively simple. Step one is you make a tangle by killing any strand debuffed enemy. Now this can be any unraveled enemy, severed enemy, or suspended enemy. But instead of blowing up tangles by shooting them or going and actually retrieving them, you want to make sure that you just go ahead and chuck your threaded spike rope dart at the tangle, and then make sure that you catch your threaded spike. That is going to explode the tangle that you throw your threaded spike at, creating a whirling maelstrom, and then you're going to dupe that tangle, and then you get basically a second whirling maelstrom. And the idea is, because your whirling maelstrom unravels targets, it should create an additional tangle as it's going ahead and spinning around, and then you should be able to just rinse and repeat based off of that one whirling maelstrom. Eventually, you're going to be at the point where you have 3 to 4 whirling maelstroms on the field at all times. And what's really cool as well is that everyone knows that with grapple grenade, if you create a grapple tangle point, then you can continuously grapple to that tangle point. It will not consume your grapple grenade charge, as you guys can see in the bottom left of my screen. But what's really, really cool is that the same logic for that also works with tangles and whirling maelstrom. So as you can see this tangle right here, I can grapple to it as many times as I want, and it won't actually take up my melee charge. And if I go ahead and make a whirling maelstrom out of it, catch that, make a second whirling maelstrom, I can grapple to the whirling maelstroms as well, and it will not eat my grapple grenade charge. And so the key idea of this build is we want to generate tangles always, throw our rope dart at the tangles to dupe them and make whirling maelstroms, throw them so we have whirling maelstroms on the field, and then use the whirling maelstroms and the tangles to basically give us free grapple grenades and subsequently free grapple melees against every single thing that we see. So we can just be constantly flying around like this. Everything's dying to whirling maelstroms, everything's dying to Beyblades, everything's dying to grapple melees. So what are we setting up for this build? How are we constructing this bad boy? Looking at our subclass, obviously we've got Silk Strike, our super, only one choice for that. We're going Gambler's Dodge with this one because we want to make sure that we can cast our dodge to immediately refund our melee ability. One of the unfortunate problems that this build has, something that I raised to Bungie, is that if you throw your threaded spike at the tangle to go ahead and dupe it and catch it, as you can see in the lower left of my screen, it unfortunately does not give you back a full melee charge. So being able to have Gambler's Dodge to be able to immediately refund that full melee charge so you can go ahead and get the next whirling maelstrom is very important for this build, so you can maintain high uptime on all these whirling maelstroms that are rampaging the field, right? And keep in mind, this is with 70 melee stat as well. So unfortunately, you might be thinking, oh, well, if I go 100 melee stat, maybe then I will get a full melee charge if I throw it at the tangle and then catch it. Unfortunately not. Another huge point I have for you with the threaded spike melee ability when it comes to using it to dupe the tangles, making sure that you catch the threaded spike is of paramount importance with a build like this, because if you don't catch the threaded spike, then you don't actually dupe the tangles. So if I just leave that and I don't actually catch it, you notice that I just don't get an extra tangle. I don't get an extra whirling maelstrom or anything like that. Biggest tip I can give you for catching the threaded spike every single time is by staring at the lower left side of your screen when it comes back. You'll notice that the icon for a brief moment will flip 180 degrees and it will relight green. So you see how on the bottom left, it kind of like flipped? You can just stare at that icon and then you'll immediately know that it's on its way back. So look at it, look at it, look at it. It doesn't matter if you're looking at it either. So you can have your back turned completely and watch for that. And as long as you click your melee button, when that icon is flipped over and lit up green, then you're good to go. You will catch it 100% of the time, which is something that you need to get really good at to actually make this build work. Otherwise, you're not duping the whirling maelstroms, and there's basically no point to having Moirai on. As far as the rest of your subclass goes, obviously we got Threaded Spike going. This thing severs targets, so you can also use this as a way to create your initial tangle as well, if you would like. With this build, I've also constructed a lot of ways for you to create an initial tangle without having to use your threaded spike, so you can make sure that you save it not only to dupe the first tangle that you make, but also so that you can have your gambler's dodge to refund the threaded spike and dupe subsequent tangles that are made by your already created whirling maelstroms that are unraveling all of the targets that they are hitting. As far as our grenades go, we're obviously going grapple grenade with this build. Like I said, the fact that you can use your grapple grenade to get free grapples on all of the tangles and all of the whirling maelstroms, and subsequently free grapple melees, which are incredibly strong right now with the new stat rework system. We'll talk more about that in a second. It's a no-brainer usage for this build, and it honestly ultimately ends up doing more damage just with grapple melees than the whirling maelstroms do themselves. You absolutely shred and destroy everything. As far as aspects go, we already talked about whirling maelstrom. Destroying a tangle will weave a violent, writhing mass of strand fibers. It will seek out targets, and it will emit unraveling projectiles when it defeats them. We're also going to be going Widow Silk, so that not only do we get an additional grapple grenade charge, which is nice for two reasons. One, it means we can mess up grappling to a tangle or a whirling maelstrom, and we still have a grapple charge left, so we can take advantage of those infinite grapple melees. But our grappling hook also creates a grapple tangle point. The reason I love this for the double grapple grenades is because this means our grapple grenades are a very easy way to start off our loop of creating tangles. Like I said, the only way we can create a tangle in the first place is by defeating a strand debuff target. Ideally, we don't really want to use our melee ability to do that, because we want to save our melee ability to be able to throw it at the tangle and dupe the tangle that we make, so we have double whirling maelstroms. Yes, we do have our gambler's dodge. We could theoretically do threaded spike, kill the target, make a tangle, gambler's dodge, and then throw it again. But I like saving the gambler's dodge so that we can make a second round of duplicated whirling maelstroms as the first one is killing things. So when we have our double grapple grenade, the grapple melee unravels targets, which means we can do something interesting here where we can grapple, we can hit a melee on this guy, and then not only do we have a grapple point as another way to get infinite grapple melees off, but it means that we can also use our grapple to go ahead and create that initial whirling maelstrom and still have a grapple left over to take advantage of grappling to the whirling maelstroms and riding them around and getting our infinite grapple melees off. But wait, there's more. I got something even cooler for you, because there's a way we can be even more efficient than that. Do me a favor, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you didn't know this before watching this video. Little fun fact about grapple grenade: if you activate it and then immediately deactivate it, it only consumes 50% of a grenade charge as opposed to a full grenade charge. So if I do this, see how I still have 1.5 charges in the bottom left side of my screen? Here's the thing though, it still made a grapple point, which I can grapple to for free without using my grapple grenade. So what's really, really cool with this build, if you're seeing the vision, is instead of just grapple meleeing a target to make your initial tangle and consuming a full grenade charge, you can just do a quick little boom, make a grapple point for half of a charge, grapple to the grapple point for free to make your tangle, and then your 1.5 grenades in. You basically effectively made a tangle for free without even using a grapple grenade charge, because once our whirling maelstroms start doing damage, they're going to start proccing some of our fragments that are going to regenerate grenade energy. And so you can basically get off free grapple grenades, almost free grapple grenades, with that little trick. It also allows you to have a situation where if you want to create a lot of grapple tangle points on the map, you can create 2 grapple tangle points with 1 grenade charge, since each of them is only consuming 50% because you're immediately canceling it. And then you have 2 grapple points that you can go ahead and sling around on as you're continuously nuking everything on the map. We are going to be going with the Threat of Warding, so that anytime we pick up an Orb of Power, we get Woven Mail, an extremely powerful damage resistance buff on Strand. It gives us -10 health, but we don't care about the health stat in PvE anyway, because all that's really doing is providing the amount of HP we get anytime we pick up an Orb of Power, and it gives us a little bit of flinch resistance. This is completely a PvP stat. We don't care too much about it. Fragment number 2 is going to be the Threat of Generation, where dealing damage generates grenade energy. And what's really cool about the Threat of Generation is that whirling maelstroms proc this so much and so well. That's why I was telling y'all before, it doesn't really matter that we're using 50% of a grenade charge to make that grapple tangle point and create that initial tangle like this. We're going to get it back so quickly because whirling maelstroms, as you can see from our grenade energy, I'm just going to rip a grenade just to get rid of it, just to showcase how quickly. Like, look at how fast it skyrockets when the whirling maelstroms are hitting things. You get your grenades so back with whirling maelstroms plus threat of generation. It's a match made in heaven. As far as the rest of our subclass, threat of propagation, powered melee final blows grant your strand weapons unraveling rounds, and it's also going to give +10 to our melee stat, which is very helpful for a build like this because we are doing a lot of meleeing with grapple melees and our threaded spike. It also helps us get closer to a 70 melee stat, which is going to be really important because 70 melee stat is exactly how much you need to go from 0 melee to a full melee with 1 use of Gambler's Dodge. What's really cool as well is that if you're using a strand weapon, obviously, this fragment procs and gives you unraveling rounds on your strand weapons. As you can see here, I have 11 seconds of unraveling rounds now on my Mint Retrograde Rocket Pulse Rifle. It procs not only on powered melee final blows from the threaded spike melee ability, but it also procs on powered melee final blows from grapple melee as well. So as you can see yet again, because I grapple meleeed that enemy, I have unraveling rounds, which means because you basically have infinite grapples because of your grapple points and the tangles and the whirling maelstroms, you effectively have infinite unraveling rounds on any of your strand weapons, which means it's that much easier to generate your next round of tangles, aka your next whirling maelstroms. You don't even need to use your grenades, your melees, or anything like that, because the unraveling rounds from your pulse rifle is just going to do that for you. Our final fragment is going to be the threat of isolation, where landing rapid precision hits emits a severing burst from the target. Not only is this exceptionally good because severing targets is extremely powerful, it cuts their damage by 40%, but it creates yet another way for us to generate tangles without having to use our abilities. So if I spawn in these tanky enemies right here, if I shoot this guy in the face a couple of times, boom, there's that severing burst, which means he is now strand debuffed, which means he will make a tangle when he dies. There is no way I just missed that. With just our weapon, any element of weapon, by the way, doesn't have to be a strand weapon specifically, any weapon, as long as we're landing rapid precision hits and we sever the targets, not only are they going to do 40% less damage, but it's also going to strand debuff them. Very easy way to generate our initial tangle or subsequent tangles as well. The stats are kind of interesting for this build for a couple of reasons. We want decently high class stat, and we want a minimum of 70 melee stat, ideally as high as you can get the melee though, but we want our melee to be a minimum of 70 because, like I said, 70 melee stat is how much you need to go from 0 melee to 100% melee off of a Gambler's Dodge activation. We want a decently high class stat as well so that our class refunds pretty quickly, so we always have that Gambler's Dodge available to go ahead and snap our fingers, hit that Gambler's Dodge, and completely refund our melee ability so we have it ready to go to dupe tangles with. But what's really interesting with this build is that my favorite stat to spec into with it is actually the grenade stat. And you might be thinking, why would you care about the grenade stat? Because isn't this build all about melees? You're doing grapple melees, you're throwing threaded spikes, you want your threaded spike up very, very often. Why do you care about the grenade stat? And that is because grapple melee counts both as a powered grenade and a powered melee attack, which means it is buffed by both going over 100 on the melee stat and by going over 100 on the grenade stat. But if you compare which stat buffs it harder, the grenade stat actually buffs the damage of your grapple melee more than the melee stat buffs the damage of your grapple melee. Now, in a perfect world, you want to go for 200 grenade and 200 melee to get the max benefits out of both of those buffs. But if you have to pick one of them, you definitely want to go with the grenade stat angle because it does buff it harder, and 100 grenade stat is going to be tied directly to your grapple melee grenade regeneration rates, whereas the melee stat is not going to be too. And like I said, as we discussed with this build, you are doing so many grapple melees that the grapple melees are almost as important to this build as the whirling maelstroms are, that you are really, really going to want to invest in buffing the damage of your grapple melee as much as you can. And the best way to do that is by dumping a ton of points into the grenade stat. You still want to invest in the melee stat to a certain degree, and if you can get it over to 200, please do, because like I said, it is going to buff your threaded spike, and it is also going to buff your grapple melee, even if as not as much damage as the grenade stat will. But what's really cool about the melee stat is that your Silk Strike super has its damage buff, obviously, if you go over 100 in the super stat. But interestingly, and I'm noticing this theme with a lot of roaming hunter supers, it also has its attacks buffed by going over 100 in the melee stat as well. So whilst we can't really afford to go high class stat, 70 melee stat, 200 grenade stat, and still get over 100 in the super, being able to go over 100 in the melee stat is not only beneficial for our grapple melees and our threaded spikes, but it's also beneficial for our super attacks themselves. Finally, as far as our armor mods go, on our helmets, we are going to be going to Dynamo mod. So anytime we cast our class ability near targets, we reduce our super cooldown. We're going a Siphon mod, matching the element of our primary ammo weapon, or our whatever non-strand weapon you're using. And then a Harmonic Siphon to match the element of your strand weapon, obviously, so that we create orbs of power on both our non-strand weapon multi-final blows and our strand weapon multi-kill final blows. Down on the gloves, we're going to go with a heavy-handed mod. Your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. That is applicable both for our threaded spike final blows and our grapple melee final blows. And then we're going to be going with double grenade font to get us as close to 200 grenade stat as possible. This means when I'm armor charged, I'm getting 20 bonus grenade stat per font mod, so a total of 40 bonus, which means anytime I'm armor charged, which is quite frequently because I'm going to be making a lot of orbs through heavy-handed and my siphon mods up here, that means that I'm actually at 172 grenade stat as opposed to 132 grenade stat, which is going to equate to approximately, I want to say like a 43% bonus damage buff to my grenade damage, aka my grapple melee damage. Down on the chest piece, it's just going to be concussive dampener and resistances, nice and easy. Down on the boots, we got an absolution mod, we got an innervation mod, and because this build does struggle to heal a little bit, it doesn't have any instant sources of healing, even though it does have woven mail for bonus damage resistance, I like running a better already mod so that we immediately begin our health regeneration anytime we pick up an orb of power. Finally, down on the class item, Reaper, so that anytime we dodge, our next weapon final blow creates an orb of power. Time dilation, so that anytime we get armor charge, those stacks last for 15 seconds apiece as opposed to 10 seconds. And then bomber, so that anytime we use our class ability, we bump up a little bit of grenade energy. However, if you have a tier 4 or tier 5 class item and you have access to 11 energy instead of 10, you'll swap out this bomber mod for a powerful attraction, so that dodging go ahead and scoops up all the orbs, which will not only proc things like absolution, innervation, and better already, but will also automatically proc fragments like the threat of warding, which immediately give you woven mail, massive damage resistance. As far as the weapons for this build, you can use whatever you want at the end of the day. I'm just going with the Mint Retrograde Rocket Pulse Rifle. I got Envious and Bait and Switch. I would prefer Rewind rounds and Bait and Switch though if I had my pick. And then I'm using the brand new Solstice submachine gun with Demolitionist and Incandescent, just because I think this thing looks awesome and I'm really excited about it. But again, you guys use absolutely whatever you want. All right, let's see if we can go ahead and proc the Thread of Solitude to go ahead and get a free Tangle. It doesn't look like we can, but we'll just go ahead and make a free grapple point. And then we can go ahead and start ripping through these guys like that. Get our double whirling maelstrom out, and then we'll let the whirling maelstroms do their thing. Okay, there, that's okay. There's our Tangle. So we'll hit this, get the melee, give him a little overload, hit that, get the whirling maelstrom, make a second whirling maelstrom, hit the, yeah, okay. Make a third whirling maelstrom. We're just kind of goofing around a little bit right now. And then we'll go ahead and hit a dodge. I'm going to make our free grapple tangle point right there. So we have free grapples. Make our first whirling maelstrom. I'm going to throw the second one relatively far away from the first one. And then we have yet another one. Go ahead and hit our grapple tangle point. Use our whirling maelstrom to get free grapples. Kind of mess them up a little bit. Catch that. Yeah, you're starting to, I think you guys are starting to see how it, picking up what I'm putting down. Oh yeah, here we go. Bang. And then I can just infinite grapple to this. Dude, holy. Okay, free grapple point. Hit it again. Mess up the grapple melee. Make the grapple melee work that time. Catch that. Another whirling maelstrom. Free grapple melees. Dude's good. Dude, it does so much damage. And then I make an orb of power every single time I grapple melee because of heavy-handed. And so because of better already and the threat of warding, I just always have woven mail. I'm always healing. You honestly kind of don't even need the tangles, to be honest. Make a grapple point, whirling maelstroms, taking apart the boss, grapple melee, whirling maelstrom. This is so easy. Anyone who saw my early preview Edge of Fate content knows that I was not particularly impressed with the Warlock exotic or the Titan exotic. but the Hunter one I felt had potential, and it definitely does. That is the build. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you find it very useful in your defense of Caldera, and I guess there's some other activities in Destiny that you could also play if you want to, but we all know that all the cool kids are in Caldera right now. So I hope you enjoy. Please be sure to like the video if you did, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see future builds. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.